Here's something that might surprise you. When researchers interviewed thousands of people, over 70, about their biggest regrets, the number one answer wasn't about career moves or missed opportunities. It was this: I wish I had listened more and talked less. Most of us think we need to speak up to get ahead, to prove our worth, to show what we know. But here's the counterintuitive truth that separates high achievers from everyone else. Stopping talking actually accelerates your wisdom acquisition. Every time you choose silence over speaking, you're gaining a competitive advantage that compounds over decades. Today, I'm sharing the strategic framework that transforms listening into your secret weapon. We'll cover the 3 levels of intentional listening that turn every conversation into a masterclass, and why this single shift creates both rapid personal growth and magnetic influence. Here's why most people stay stuck at their current knowledge level. They're too busy talking to learn anything new. Think about your last meaningful conversation. How much time did you spend formulating your response versus actually absorbing what the other person said? Most of us are just waiting for our turn to speak, but strategic listeners operate differently. They understand something powerful. Every person you meet knows something you don't. When you commit to listening more than speaking, every interaction becomes a learning opportunity. This creates a compound effect where your wisdom grows exponentially instead of linearly. Let me give you a real example. I know someone who built a multi-million-dollar business not because he was the smartest person in the room, but because he mastered the art of strategic silence. In every meeting, he followed what I call the 70-30 rule. Listen 70% of the time. Speak 30%, while others were competing to share their ideas. He was absorbing insights, identifying patterns, and understanding the real problems that needed solving. The neurological advantage here is fascinating. When you're genuinely listening, not just hearing words, but processing meaning, your brain activates pattern recognition systems. You start connecting dots that speakers miss because they're focused on their next point instead of the bigger picture. Here's the mistake most people make. They confuse hearing with strategic listening. Hearing is passive. Strategic listening is active. It's asking yourself, what can I learn from this person? What perspective do they have that I'm missing? What experiences shaped their viewpoint? Your ego wants to contribute, to prove you belong in the conversation, but that need to add your voice actually blocks wisdom absorption. When you're thinking about what to say next, you're not fully present to what's being said now. The most successful people I know have mastered this principle. They ask better questions. Instead of giving quick answers, they probe deeper when others would move on. They create space for others to share insights that would never surface in a typical back and forth conversation. This isn't about being passive or never contributing. It's about being strategic with your silence. When you do speak, it carries more weight because people know you've been listening. Your contributions become more valuable because they're built on understanding, not assumption. The compound effect is real. Every conversation where you choose listening over talking, you gain insights that inform your next decision, your next interaction, your next opportunity. Over months and years, this creates a wisdom gap between you and people who are still trying to prove themselves through talking. Most people learn from their own limited experience. Strategic listeners learn from everyone's experience. That's how you accelerate wisdom acquisition, and why the most successful people often seem to have insights beyond their years. Here's something that will flip your understanding of influence on its head. The less you speak, the more people want to hear what you have to say. This seems backwards. But it's one of the most powerful psychological principles you can master. When you consistently listen more than you talk, something fascinating happens. People start viewing you as wise, thoughtful, and trustworthy. They begin seeking your opinion precisely because you don't force it on them. This creates what I call psychological magnetism. People are drawn to those who make them feel heard and understood. Think about the people who have the most influence in your life. I bet they're not the ones who dominate every conversation. They're the ones who ask thoughtful questions, who remember what you told them weeks ago, who seem to really get you. That's the mirroring effect in action. When you listen deeply, people feel valued, and they naturally want to reciprocate that attention. The most influential leaders understand this principle. They know that asking better questions is more powerful than having all the answers. Instead of jumping in with solutions, they probe deeper. They ask, what makes you think that? Or, help me understand your perspective on this. These questions don't just gather information. They build connection and trust. Here's why this works so well. When someone feels truly heard, they drop their defenses. They become more open, more honest, more willing to share what's really going on. This gives you access to information that others never get: the real motivations, the hidden concerns, the actual problems that need solving. But there's a crucial difference between waiting to speak and actually processing what you hear. Most people use listening time to prepare their rebuttal or craft their response. Strategic listeners use that time differently. They're analyzing tone, reading between the lines, identifying what's not being said. Reflective listening takes this even further. Instead of immediately responding with your own thoughts, you reflect back what you heard. So if I understand correctly, you're saying this technique serves two purposes. First, it confirms you actually understood. Second, it gives the other person a chance to clarify or go deeper. This approach uncovers hidden opportunities that others miss completely. When people feel understood, they share more. They reveal challenges they're facing, goals they're working toward, resources they need, information that could lead to partnerships, collaborations, or solutions you never would have discovered through traditional networking. The trust-building mechanism here is automatic. When someone consistently listens to you without judgment, without immediately trying to fix or advise, you naturally begin to trust them more. You start viewing them as someone who genuinely cares about your perspective, not just someone waiting for their turn to talk. This transforms every interaction into relationship capital. Instead of trying to impress people with what you know, you're investing in understanding who they are. That investment pays dividends for years because people remember how you made them feel, not what you said. When seniors talk about their biggest relationship regrets, they don't usually mention arguments they lost or points they failed to make. They regret the moments they missed, the times they were physically present, but mentally preparing their next response, instead of truly connecting with someone they cared about. The listening framework that prevents this kind of regret is simpler than you might think, but it requires intentional practice. It starts with reading between the lines. Most communication isn't in the words themselves. It's in the tone, the pauses, what's emphasized, and what's glossed over. When someone says, "I'm fine," but their voice sounds strained, they're telling you two things. The words say everything's okay, but the tone says they need support. Strategic listeners catch both messages. They don't just accept the surface answer. They create space for the real conversation. This emotional intelligence multiplier effect changes everything about your relationships. When you consistently pick up on these subtle cues, people start viewing you as unusually perceptive and caring. They feel safe opening up to you because they know you actually pay attention to what matters to them. Staying present during difficult conversations is where this skill really pays off. When someone's upset or frustrated, your natural instinct might be to defend yourself or fix the problem. But the most powerful thing you can do is listen completely before responding. Let them express everything they need to say without interruption. Here's what's fascinating. When you stop defending your position and start seeking to understand theirs, conflicts often resolve themselves. People don't always need you to agree with them. They need to feel heard and understood. Once that happens, they're usually more open to finding solutions together. The legacy effect of this approach is profound. Years from now, people won't remember every conversation you had, but they'll remember how those conversations made them feel. They'll remember that you were someone who truly listened, who cared about their perspective, who made them feel valued and understood. This creates deeper, lasting bonds that survive disagreements, distance, and time. Because when you consistently show up as someone who listens more than they speak, you become irreplaceable in people's lives. The single most important shift you can make starting today is this. Stop waiting for your turn to speak and start genuinely seeking to understand. This isn't just about being polite or patient. It's about recognizing that every person you meet has insights that could change your trajectory if you're wise enough to listen for them. Here's your 30-day challenge. In every meaningful conversation, follow the 70-30 rule. Listen 70% of the time. Speak 30%. Ask one follow-up question before sharing your own thoughts. Notice how this changes not just what you learn, but how people respond to you. If you want more strategies for building wisdom and influence from people who've mastered these skills, check out the next video where we explore the decision-making frameworks that separate successful people from everyone else.